"Get up and clean. You're useless." My daughter-in-law screamed, her voice echoing through the room. I stood there in my own kitchen, trembling. The mop handle felt heavy in my 72-year-old hands. I had been trying to clean up the water I'd spilled while washing dishes. My arthritis had been acting up again, making my fingers stiff and clumsy. "My name is Dorothy Williams. For 50 years, I kept a spotless home. I raised 3 children in this very house. I baked cookies every Sunday and hosted Thanksgiving dinners that folks still talk about. But these days, my hands don't always cooperate the way they used to. Jessica." My son Tom's wife stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. Her face was twisted with anger. I couldn't understand when things had changed so much between us. There was a time when she used to hug me and call me Mom. "I'm sorry," I whispered, bending down slowly to wipe up the water. Each movement sent a sharp pain through my back. "Sorry doesn't cut it anymore," Jessica snapped. "You're always making messes. Always in the way." My son Tom worked long hours at the factory. He left before dawn and came home after dark. He didn't know how things had changed at home. I didn't have the heart to tell him. He had enough worries trying to provide for his family. That evening, after Jessica had gone to bed, I sat alone in the small room they'd given me. It used to be Tom's childhood bedroom. I could still see the mark on the wall where he'd measured his height every birthday. The wallpaper had faded, but the memories hadn't. I thought about my late husband, Robert. He'd been gone 5 years now. Robert always said that kindness was like a warm blanket on a cold night. It costs nothing, but means everything. I wondered what he would think of all this. The next morning, I woke early, as I always did. Old habits die hard. I made my way to the kitchen, trying to be as quiet as possible. I wanted to make breakfast before Jessica woke up. Maybe if I could just be more helpful, things would get better. But as I reached for the coffee pot, I heard footsteps behind me. "What are you doing?" Jessica's voice was sharp, cutting through the morning silence. "I thought I'd make breakfast," I said softly, not turning around. "I don't need your help," she said. "Just go back to your room." I nodded and shuffled back down the hallway. Through the window, I could see the morning sun painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It reminded me of the dawns I used to watch with Robert, sitting on our porch swing with cups of coffee and our dreams. Days turned into weeks. I stayed in my room most of the time, coming out only when I was sure Jessica wasn't around. I'd lost weight. Food didn't taste like much anymore when you ate alone. One afternoon, there was a knock at the front door. I heard Jessica answer it. "Hello, I'm Helen Carter from next door," a warm voice said. "I just wanted to introduce myself. My husband and I moved in last month." "That's nice," Jessica replied, her tone flat. "I'm pretty busy right now." "Of course, dear. I just wanted to drop off some banana bread. It's my grandmother's recipe." I heard the door close. A few minutes later, there was a soft tap on my bedroom door. "Mrs. Williams." It wasn't Jessica's voice. "My name is Helen. I'm your new neighbor." I opened the door slowly. A woman about my age stood there, with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. She was holding a plate wrapped in foil. "I hope you don't mind," Helen said gently. "Your daughter-in-law seemed busy, so I thought I'd bring this directly to you." "That's very thoughtful," I managed to say. My voice came out scratchy from not using it much. Helen's eyes scanned my small room, taking in the sparse furnishings and the sad look in my eyes. She didn't say anything, but I could see understanding in her face. "Would you like to come over for tea tomorrow?" she asked. "Around 2 o'clock? My husband Henry and I would love the company." I hesitated. "I'm not sure if I can." "Well, the invitation stands," Helen said warmly. "We're right next door. The house with the blue shutters." The next day, I thought about that invitation all morning. At 1:30, I gathered my courage and put on my nicest cardigan. I left a note for Jessica saying I was visiting the neighbor. Helen's home was warm and inviting. The smell of fresh cookies filled the air. Henry, a tall man with laugh lines around his eyes, greeted me at the door like I was an old friend. "Dorothy, we're so glad you could make it," he said, his voice booming with genuine pleasure. We sat in their cozy living room, sipping tea and eating those wonderful cookies. They asked about my life, and for the first time in months, I found myself talking. Really talking? I told them about Robert and our 50 years together, about raising Tom and his sisters, about the garden I used to keep and the quilts I used to sew. Helen and Henry listened. They didn't interrupt or check their phones. They just listened, the way people used to do. You know, Helen said softly, my mother lived with us for her last years. It wasn't always easy, but she taught me something important. She said that how we treat the elderly shows what kind of people we really are. Tears welled up in my eyes. I hadn't cried in front of anyone in so long. Feel like such a burden? I whispered. Henry leaned forward. Dorothy, you're not a burden. You're a blessing. You have stories and wisdom and love to share. That's never a burden. They invited me back the next day and the day after that. Slowly, I began to feel like myself again. Helen taught me to use her tablet computer and we looked at recipes together. Henry showed me his woodworking shop in the garage and made me a beautiful wooden box for my keepsakes. One evening, Tom came home early from work. He found me missing and panicked. When I returned from Helen and Henry's house, he was waiting. Mom, where were you? His face was pale with worry. I was visiting the neighbors, I said quietly. I didn't know you were going out. He looked confused. Jessica said you've been keeping to your room. It's when everything came out. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told Tom everything. The harsh words, the isolation, the feeling of being unwanted in my own son's home. Tom's face went through a range of emotions. Shock, anger, sadness, and finally determination. Mom, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. This is going to change. Right now, that night, Tom and Jessica had a long conversation. I could hear their voices, but not the words. The next morning, Jessica knocked on my door. Her eyes were red from crying. Dorothy, she began, her voice shaking, I owe you an apology. A big one. I've been awful to you, and there's no excuse. She sat down on my bed, and the story came pouring out. She'd been struggling with stress from her job and fear about money. She'd been taking it out on the person who couldn't fight back, me. I forgot that you're not just Tom's mother, Jessica said, tears streaming down her face. You're a person who's lived a whole life, who's loved and lost and survived. I'm so ashamed. I took her hand. It wasn't easy, but I did it. We all stumble sometimes, I said. What matters is that we get back up. Things changed after that. Not overnight, but gradually. Jessica started asking about my recipes and my stories. Tom made sure to spend time with me every evening. We started having family dinners again, all of us together at the table. Helen and Henry became like family too. Our two households blended together in the best way. Sunday afternoons became a tradition, with all of us gathered in one yard or the other, sharing food and laughter. I learned something important through all of this. Kindness isn't just something we give. Sometimes we have to be brave enough to accept it too. And love isn't perfect. It stumbles and falls. But when we choose to pick it back up and try again, that's when it becomes real. On my 73rd birthday, surrounded by family and friends, I looked around the room and felt Robert's presence. I could almost hear his voice saying what he always said. Kindness is like a warm blanket on a cold night. It costs nothing but means everything. And he was right. He was always right about that.